Evening everyone, welcome to the Azeroth Review as well. If anyone's new, I don't know why I said as well though. If anyone's new, this is just where you get to say whatever you want to talk about World of Warcraft wise. I am just going to do a thing. I don't know what I've done there. But, oh, hi Alban. Okay, well it's all working, that's good. So, in terms of what we've potentially got quite a menu on today. Quite a few things happened after like 2 weeks of, I thought, nothing really happening apart from what's in Battle for Azeroth. I am going to have to now praise it. There may be spoilers in this. I'm not deliberately going to talk about spoilers, but they may crop up because although there has been suddenly a lot of news in the last week because of Blizzard's Q&A, it's all about Battle for Azeroth again. Nothing's really happening in Legion. In fact, I haven't watched it yet, but I have just noticed that Ars from Heel vs Babyface has put up a video on, what's he called it, Deconstructing Legion. So he's basically of the view that Legion is done and dusted. I mean, story-wise, obviously it's not, because we haven't dealt with the sword yet in Silithus, and we haven't dealt with our artifact weapons. But all of that, of course, I'm fast losing hope any of it is going to happen before the pre-expansion patch, although that's still technically Legion content too. So, evening, who have we got? Fraser, Whittleton, and Dorian Hire. So, yes. So, we'll just go with what everybody wants to talk about. I've got my list of stuff. Let's have a look. You tried to comment to a US post on Haven Gaze, but couldn't. Do you need a US account? You do need a US account, yes. I have one now. I've abandoned that one now, though. It's all got derailed. I thought it... you know, that's what... Oh, God, it's so annoying. Completely derailed by people who are very much opposed to it. And I'm not... I don't mind people posting that they're opposed to it with their reasons. That's all great. The problem is that the people who are for it just started arguing with them. So now it's just completely dead. It's dead in the water, that post. Because, yeah, instead of just reading the comments that people said opposed to it and then just writing, you know, stuff, which is what I wanted people to do, it all turned into a big argument. Who'd have guessed, you know, on an internet forum that something would degenerate into a big old argument? So there you go. But yes, you do need an active NA account to be able to post on the US forums, which is why I bought myself an NA account. And maintain it so that I can post on the forums. The problem is it's not as simple. Like my browsers can't. There's something weird. Blizzard really don't like cross-Atlantic discussion, because if I just load up the US forums, it doesn't log me in. So if I log myself in, you know, you click log in, it goes, oh yeah, fine, and then you're still not logged in, and it's really annoying. So sometimes, you know, I might want to put something on a post and I have to wait. I tried being clever and having the US forums only in Chrome and the EU forums only in Microsoft Edge. You know, different browsers. I thought, well, that should be fine. No. So it doesn't matter whether I want to post on the EU or the NA forums. It's a matter of potluck. They've even introduced RNG to me being able to log onto the forums. That's how much RNG is a meme of Legion. Even Gordon Ramsay has an NPC, does it? I don't keep tracks on all these NPCs. Try Firefox. I have Firefox on my computer downstairs. Like, there's just something about logging into both EU and NA on the same computer, even if it's not at the same time. It's like there's something in the woodwork that goes, he's been posting on the EU account. He shouldn't be able to post on the NA account as well. What's going on? And it just puts a block in the way. And it doesn't say, there's no error message. It doesn't say, oh, we didn't like your login data. No, it's quite happy with my login data. It's just smiling at me. It's a bit like, you know, when you go to, I don't know, you're trying to get into, you know, a theatre or something. You got your ticket and you go to the person, you show them the ticket. They just smile at you. They don't let you through. They just smile at you. Is there anything wrong with this? No, it's fine. Can you let me in then? No, I'm not going to let you in. You know, that's just how it's like. I mean, I'm not suggesting we spam Warcraft devs with it. I mean, I linked them with it, but you know. But there you go. So it seems to have basically derailed. Blizzard may already have made a decision on it. What I really wanted the post to be about was some good ideas, you know, for it that might be interesting. But a few people did that, but not very much. Hi, Morella. So the WoW doc vid. You thought I was going to sneak in an Argus kill? No. We're not ready to kill Argus. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if we're only about the halfway mark. I hope we're more than the halfway mark. But, you know, when you consider, you know, where we are in it, we're on to the toughest bit now. The bit that takes the most coordination. And we're not necessarily the best at that. So it could be quite tricky, really. Did I see the hotfix note, Mythic Antorus Cross Realm? Yes, I did see that. That was a bit disconcerting, really, because making it Cross Realm is basically like Blizzard saying that tier's over with now. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I still don't have Cutting Edge. So obviously, you know, the Cutting Edge is still active and it will be active for some time to come. It's not a big deal. But it does just remind you, if this were not the last tier of the expansion, the next tier of the expansion would be imminent. You would not be getting Cutting Edge, which is hugely disappointing. That is very, very disappointing, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, that's... although my first thought was maybe we can recruit a bit, because obviously one difficulty in recruitment is that people don't want to pay to, or can't pay to transfer. I think more realistically don't want to pay to transfer. I think most people, if they needed to, could. Although I do understand if you've got a lot of characters. But the fact that obviously they wouldn't be able to join the guild cross-realm unless it's on a connected realm. But that they would be able to potentially raid. So they could, you know, in other words, they could try out. I remember there was someone that I tried to recruit, a Shadow Priest. They looked good as well. We could do with a Shadow Priest now. During something. Tomb of Sargeras it was, in fact. And they wouldn't join. They were saying to themselves, I don't know, because, you know, if it doesn't work out, I've paid all those transfer fees and blah, 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 blah. Which was absolutely stupid. He looked like quite a good player. So unless he was a colossal idiot from the social point of view, then there would have been no problem. So in a situation like this, where you could, you know, he wouldn't be able to join but he could raid with us, and then, you know, he could effectively do his trial whilst not being in the guild, I suppose. And that would have worked out okay. So yes. Hi, Pinky Tiger. I'm fine, thank you. Are you? What percentage of Mythic Raiders look for a new guild just for a new expansion? I don't know what percentage of players. What I do know is if you are wanting to find another guild, this is the best time, because you're in no great rush. Like when I was looking for a guild at the end of, just before Antorus came out, at the end of Tomb of Sargeras. So, you know, I was in a big rush, and I almost didn't get anywhere. Which meant that in the here and now, I wouldn't be a raider. Which I suppose would have meant more time for actually doing content. But, you know, then you could argue what credibility would some of the content have been. So, yes. Whereas now, if you're looking, you don't have to like go, okay, what's the best that I can get into right now? You can take your time. You can bide your time. You can wait for a really good opportunity to come up. Keep raiding with where you're raiding, you know. Keep building up your portfolio of evidence to how good a raider you are. And when one that seems ideal comes along, then you can apply for that. And if you don't get into that one, then you can wait a little bit more. I mean, there's quite a lot of time to go. And even when the new expansion comes out, what you'll find is in some mythic guilds, because those mythic guilds are going to do less and less raiding, because I mean, as soon as people clear it, or clear as much as they're going to do, they'll do a re-clear each week, but it'll get shorter and shorter. It'll get down to the point where they're doing it in one night. So then they're going to have months of basically raiding one night per week. So then when the new expansion comes out and all of a sudden you're back into it full time, some people just go, do you know what, I've enjoyed the time off. I don't really want to go back to full time. all of a sudden that guild needs some new members. And then, so even when it comes out, obviously you don't want to be waiting for it to come out. You ideally want to get into somewhere before it comes out. But you don't have to be in any great rush. No great rush at all. But I have no idea what percentage move. Do I think I hope I'm not going to change guilds. I don't join a guild to try and move on. Even though, you know, when you consider... I have been in a lot of raiding guilds. You know, I'm not one of these people that's in a raiding guild for years, but I never go to a guild just to be in it for a tier or two and then move on. It just often turns out that way. I mean, my main requirement now is that we get comfortable cutting edge. Now, that's, you know, obviously that's not been the case this tier, because although we're going to get cutting edge, I hope, unless it all, you know, melts down. I mean, I think there's going to be some tantrums before Argus falls, but because there's no pressure on the time, then it's going to be done. But if this were a proper tier with another one to come, we've just missed out on cutting edge, basically. So it's not even like we're really close. Like, people are thinking, because we've got to that last bit now, that we're quite close. But that last bit is the bugger. It's the thing where if you don't get it quite right, you're just screwed. And it's not even like we're getting to that bit consistently. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we'll have like an hour in the raid night where we keep getting to that point. And then sometimes we get there first time of the night, and then we spend an hour and a half wiping in phase 1. So there we go. Do I think... Oh, sorry, I've answered that one. How many players do you need in Mythic Raid of these games for guild achievements? For guild achievement? 80%. Do you mean in order for it to be classed as a guild run? I think it's... Well, the rule for Master Loot, so I assume it's the same thing, is 80%. Do I believe that emotional connections to a guild have the potential to inhibit you from personal progress? It does with some people. There are some people who are emotionally attached to a guild. It's like, you'll notice this. Whenever a guild disbands, like goes tits up, what will happen is, obviously, some people will stop. You know, the reason it's gone tits up is because some people have stopped. Some people will leave. Some people will just stay in it as either a social, or they'll quit the game. And these will be people who were raiders. You know, they used to do the mythic raiding thing, and they were serious raiders. So those, you know, when they decide to just stay in it as a social or stop playing the game altogether, these were people who were clearly only playing the game for the enjoyment of being in the company of the people that were in that guild. So inevitably, for some people, yes. Because you get that every time a guild collapses. Every time a guild collapses, there will always be one or two that don't move on to another guild. So in other words, it's not the raiding that was the key thing for them, it was the people. And there are people that I know of as well that have talked to me about moving, you know, because you always get the thing, someone will say to me, should I change guild? And when you describe the situation, you always think, yes, you should. But the reason they're asking you in the first place is because they don't really want to, you know. But you know, you have to accept that a guild is not going to suddenly, you know, what you'd ideally love. Let's say you're in a guild and it's not as quite as serious as you would like. You know, what you'd ideally like in your own mind is for everyone to suddenly become more serious and start taking mechanics more seriously, or do whatever is the thing that's not being done consistently, because everyone makes mistakes, but consistently. But that's not going to happen. You know, you just have to accept that. It's never going to happen. So if you're leaps and bounds ahead of your guildies, you're either going to choose to limit yourself because you want to stay with those people, or you're going to decide to move on. And it's that choice. I'm not saying, you know, one is better than the other, but that is the stark choice. You can't expect everyone else to suddenly get to your level, because they may not want to. Hi, Cullen. Love my alpha content. There's not enough alpha content at the moment, but there will be more when summer arrives. I've got one week and a day. And then, although I have jobs to do over Easter, I still nonetheless have a much more relaxed time of it. So I should be able to do loads more then. Oh, you're still limited on how many cross-realm players you can have. Yes, you are. Yeah, you can't just suddenly mix and match it. Unless, of course, you want to do the old personal loop, because that should be fine. So yeah, 80% is what you need. So, but you know, if you need to recruit more than 20% of your roster from overseas, so to speak, another server, then you're in trouble. You're not being able to use Master Loot is the least of your troubles. Hi, Kaz. And Korean, hiya. So yes. Now, where was I? But I think that's basically, you know, I think some people were a bit surprised that they didn't announce any nerfs. I was actually saying, so where's the nerfs for the idiots who can't get over the line yet? And then someone said, oh, well, they've already nerfed how the chains work. Great. It's like, what about? I mean, the facts, for example, what they could, I'm not saying they should, by the way, but what they could do, what happens on Mythic Argus, when you go from phase 2 to phase 3, to get to phase 3, you have to get him down to 40%. But then when he changes to phase 3, he suddenly bungs up to 60%. If he didn't, then the fight would be a lot easier, because we've got him down to 30% or just under 30% in phase 3. Now, if he didn't increase his health by 20%, that would be the equivalent of us getting him down to about 7%. At that point, we're a lot closer to killing the boss. At the moment, we're not, because we've still got all that health to get over as well. So they could, as a, you know, if they saw a huge logjam of guilds just stuck on it because we're too dumb to be able to work together and push through it, then, of course, you know, Blizzard might just choose to not have him increase his health by 20% there. And that would just make it so much easier. If the tier's basically over anyway, you never know, they might be even thinking of that. That would be drastic, I have to say. That would be very, very drastic. But possible. Possible. So, what did we learn in the Q&A last week? Because I've still only done one video on the Q&A. There was others I wanted to do. But every time I sit down to do one, something else has happened. A thing happens. And I end up doing that instead. I am actually going to do the stuff on classes and races, because there's some stuff to talk about on that. I think what's going to disappoint people with BFA, just in terms of more casual players who maybe aren't keeping tabs on what's going on personally, is just this fact that people losing their artifact abilities are not going to be happy. I don't think anyone's really happy about it. I'm quite happy that, you know, for my spec they're changing it quite a lot, because I didn't really like the Legion system. But this concept of giving us the artifact weapons and shiny things on it and then taking it away at the end, you know, and it's all right coming out with the argument, oh yeah, but it's this huge lore weapon, even though 34 of them were made up on the spot, and you've got, and it was supposed to be special. Yes, you should become less powerful now that you're not wielding it at full power. Fine, that's a way of explaining it storyline wise. But the fact of the matter is, you've given people a shiny thing and then taken the shiny thing away. Because although we know, because Blizzard said so right from the start, to be fair to them, they didn't string us along. They said right from the start that the artifacts are for Legion only. You know, we're not going to get to keep them in the following expansion. They said that at the start of Legion. But not everyone would have. Not everyone looks at stuff on the forums or listens to what Blizzard say. You know, it might come as a bit of a surprise to them that this is going to happen. And it's a bit like, you know, you shouldn't give the thing if you're not going to let them keep it. But there you go. So I think they're going to get a bit of a get it in the neck there, and they'll probably do their usual crying act of, oh, we explained it all, it's all fine. It's not all fine. Don't do it. If they weren't prepared to just keep it, then they shouldn't have done it. That's my view anyway. Appreciate a video about the potential Master Loot changes. I feel like there's been a lot of sorts of reactions over it. The problem with the Master Loot thing is they didn't spell out exactly what they intend. You know, the The fact, I mean, there's even been some people saying in comments they're clutching at straws with this, saying, okay, well, actually, no, they're not getting rid of Master Loot. They're just sort of, I don't know, hoping that we suddenly decide to use personal loot because, oh, you get an extra piece of gear. You don't actually, this is a fallacy as well, this concept of getting extra gear with personal loot, because it's not actually true. In terms of the number of items you're going to get from per boss, yes, your raid is going to get more items of personal loot. But an item is only an item if someone can equip it. And the problem is with personal loot, there's a chance that a piece of personal loot that someone gets that is no use to them, but bloody useful to someone else, can't be traded because it happens to be a big upgrade for the person that got it. And this is particularly likely at the start of a tier, which is also when the gear is more useful. You know, you find as you go through the tier, fewer and fewer items are an upgrade. So, yeah, personal loot, in terms of how many upgrades it will get your raid group, I doubt it does give you... well, I know straight up it doesn't give you more, otherwise people would use personal loot. It doesn't. It gives you more chaos crystals. Or a little bit more gold if you're not an enchanter, you know. The system in ICC was good, where they implemented 5% nerf every week. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I think the sort of the way they do it now is a bit better, where they don't nerf it at all until they see a bottleneck. Because gear is supposed to be what nerfs the content. You know, each week you do the farm bosses again, you get more gear. Except, you know, my guild, like many guilds that's on Argus at the moment, is not re-clearing, which I think is a mistake. You can understand the reason why people will do it, though. They will underestimate the upgrades they're getting and overestimate their own capacity to kill the boss at whatever loot level you're at. Because they'll say, which is perfectly true, oh, well, the guilds that killed it earlier on had less gear than we do. So, well, this is true. But it could be argued they also had better coordination or better planning or whatever else as well. So, yeah. Because every time we just miss a DPS check, I just think to myself, if we'd have had 3 more... And my particular guild, there was a bit more to it than that. I think there's quite a lot of the raiders would not be up for re-clearing, which would mean people not focusing, which would mean lots of wipes, which means it would take too long to re-clear. So you could argue that it was sort of the right decision from that point of view. But then that's a problem with the raiders not wanting to, you know, clear the stuff really quickly. Because if you can get your clear down, your farm down to 1 night, you know, if you've got at least 2 other nights, and we've got 3 other nights, that's plenty of actual, you know, progress time. So you're leveling an allied Nightborn rogue, and the leveling is better zone-wise, but taking way too long. Yes, it does take way too long. That's always been my argument. And it was made worse with the changes. Like, in theory, someone even put a comment a long time before Blizzard, way before Blizzard even announced that zone scaling was going to be going, you know, across all the zones. Obviously, it was always on the cards. Hi, JD. And, you know, I said in that video how great it would be if we had scaling in zones. But where it's gone wrong, it's not the scaling that's the issue either, for making it take too long. But, yeah, I think people associate it with that. Plus the fact that it's not proper, it's not scaling that I wanted. I wanted full scaling, like everything. So, but yeah, it just takes too long. See, for me, when they did zone scaling, that was the perfect time to do a level squish. We don't need 110 levels. We certainly don't need 120 levels. You know, they could have had it so it takes the same amount of time to get a level as it does now, but you just suddenly slash them. You know, take off 1/3 of the levels or something. Have it so the level cap now is level 80 or something. And that would massively slash the amount of time it takes to level. And even getting to level 80, it takes a long time. It takes plenty long enough to learn how to play the class and to learn about the world. There's everything that you need to do while you're leveling, you can do for that. It also means you don't have to keep going up levels and not getting anything. I absolutely hate it when you get a level in a role-playing game of any kind and you don't get anything for it. It's like, well, what's the level worth to me? Because all that happens when you go one level up, unless you're in like heirloom gear, which is a different thing, but like when we start BFA, so we're going to go from level 110 to 120. Every level we get, we're going to get as nothing. We'll get a few stats, but that's not noticeable because actually you're going to lose power. Your haste rate, your percentage haste mastery crit, is going to go down. Haste in particular is noticeable because it means your cast time is going to be longer, or in my case, the cooldown time is going to increase on my abilities. So I'm going to feel sluggish. Every time I get a level, I'm going to feel weaker. I'm not going to be weaker, but I'm going to feel weaker. So it's desperately disappointing. So you don't need as many levels. Just do away with them. But, it's like Blizzard are quite good at coming up with quite good ideas, but they seem to shy away from these stunningly good ideas or completely thinking outside the box. They don't like to do anything that would be a different way of doing it. Stuck in their ways, I think. It's interesting that they are looking at bringing Tyrannical and Fortified down to the base level in Mythic Plus. I hope they come up with some fun affixes. Yeah, they are very much keep going back to the drawing board on affixes. One of the affixes which they announced, a new affix, they've already shelved, I think, haven't they? I can't remember what it was called, but it meant that if you were below full health, in other words, if you'd taken damage, you would do more damage. A lot of people didn't like that, I know. Because when I did my video on it, there's a lot of people didn't like it. And yeah, they seem to have binned that for now. Doesn't mean to say it couldn't come back at some point. But yeah, obviously, I think with Mythic Plus, the difficulty is it's been successful. They don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but at the same time, Blizzard have this fixation. Every expansion, they have to reinvent the wheel all the time. Like, this is something I want to talk about in a separate video, but I'll talk about here as well. So Ian Hazakostas was saying about the pruning, he says it's not tenable to keep giving us new abilities every expansion. And that's what prompted the pruning that began for WoD. At the end of MOP, but for WoD. Which is true. It is untenable. But my response to that is, why the bloody hell were we getting new abilities every expansion? What this should... Because this is not normal behaviour for an MMO. This is just what World of Warcraft do. I'm not saying others don't do as well, but it's not common practice, as far as I can tell, not for the ones I've played. What you do is you design a class to be able to be fun and to be able to cope with all the challenges that could befall it. That's all you need of it. If you design that and it works, that's it, it's done. Now, if when another expansion's coming out, you decide, well, there's a few things that aren't ideal, could do with a bit of tweaking. Sure, okay, you tweak it. But why do we have to keep getting new things? That's why we ended up with the situation of ability bloat. Because they should have... But again, it comes back to the other problem, isn't it? It's a bit like the artifacts. When you give someone something really nice and then take it away, that's worse than them not having it in the first place. It's a bit like the saying, it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Is it? Bollocks. It's better never to have had it in the first place than to have the shiny thing and then have the shiny thing taken away from you. No one likes having things taken away from them. It's not nice, ever. Apart from diseases, but nothing. It's not nice to have anything good taken away from you. I kind of agree with the decision to make zones have a bottom level. But yeah, I'd really like to have preferred all zones to scale up to the most recent X-Pack. Well, I mean, this is what I would... I know there were people, I'm not saying, I'm not going to be one of the... And Blizzard warned against these people, didn't they? The ones who say, oh, nobody wants this, or everybody wants this. I'm not going to fall into that trap. I know not everybody wanted zone scaling the way I wanted it. But the way I wanted it, for my money, makes it a much better experience because it means you don't associate questing with leveling. Because it means when you get to level cap, you can still carry on questing. And that's what they tried to do with Suramar. With Suramar, obviously had an entire zone that you couldn't even access until you got to level cap. And what was Suramar for? It was just for questing. That's all it was. It was for questing. And so Blizzard were trying to break this association between quest and leveling. The easiest way to do that is to just have everything scale. I can understand they don't want everything to scale up to level cap, up to the previous expansion's level cap. So in other words, everything up to and including WoD content would scale to 110. But then it would stop. No, not, sorry, to 100. Apologies, to 100. And then only the Legion stuff would go up to 110. And that the Legion stuff would start at 100. So you couldn't get there early either. That would be important too. And then when Battle for Azeroth comes out, the Legion stuff can then be accessed earlier. Maybe not at level 1. Maybe we shouldn't be getting the Ashbringer at level 1. But maybe you start it there. And you let all the other rest of the content scale up to 110. That would work. So you could have, like, as you say, minimum levels to get to a certain piece of content for an expansion. But don't limit the upper level up and... Well, you limit it only to the previous expansion's level cap. And I think that would be perfect. Because you can get to level cap and then you can just carry on leveling, carry on questing. No. Sometimes ding 5, 6 or 7 times with no new ability. You ding 10 times with no new ability in Battle for Azeroth. There's sorry, I'm missing a thing. Oh, Dominic Massius on Patreon. Oh, thank you very much. I just lost someone off Patreon, so that's a like for like. I need to actually rethink what I'm doing with Patreon as well, because I don't think people there are getting the best deal, I have to say. I don't know. I need to think about that. Or someone needs to come up with some good ideas. So, anyway, what was I? I've forgotten. I was distracted by the Murloc. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so in Battle for Azeroth, we're going to go up 10 levels before we get anything new. That's 10 levels. It's like, you're at level 111 now. Am I? Great. It's just ticking one off. It's like being in jail leveling in Battle for Azeroth. You know, the questing's fine. That's all good. The experience is good. But the actual gaining of levels is like being in prison. You just chalking one off till you can get out and be free. It's just level 111. Only 9 more to go. Only 8 more to go. 7 more to go. That's what it's like. It is. It's just like being in prison, I imagine. Never been in prison. So, anyway, where was I? Oh, Blighted, was it the affix? I can't remember the name of it, actually. One that, where, it should have been called self-harm, shouldn't it, that affix? You take damage and you do more damage, so you were encouraged to never be at full health. Yeah, that affix should have been called self-harm. Setting the new X-Pack max level cap at 10 levels over 5 just keeps subs playing longer. I don't know what the reason is. They may have explained the reason at some point, because obviously after Wrath we did go through a period of 5 levels. It was like Cataclysm went from 80 to 85 and then Mop went 85 to 90. But then it was all back to 10 levels again. And I don't know what the reason was. Like I say, they may have explained it. You have to, like, bear in mind, well, first of all, I may have read it and forgotten. But second of all, when it happened, I missed out on it anyway, because I wasn't playing WoW at the end of Wrath. I'd quit the game. So I didn't experience the transition from Wrath to Cata. I wasn't in the Cataclysm beta because I hadn't applied to be in the beta, because I wasn't playing the game at the time. So I don't know if they gave a reason for it. I imagine they did. I don't know what that reason was. Now, technically, I was playing when they decided to go back and to do it for 10 levels again for WoD. But I don't remember if they said anything about that either. So I cannot remember. Hi, Diablo. You missed many things. You'll have to watch it later. An 8-hour prison sentence. Well, 8 hours for you, maybe. I've got to do it round work. It'll be how long? Actually, how long did it take me in real time? I can't remember. I could possibly look it up, but I have to fit it around work, so I get. Takes me 2 or 3 days realistically, which is still a fairly short prison sentence, admittedly, but still. No talent when you reach level 120 in BFA. No. I don't know at what point you get Azerite Armour, though. I don't know whether... See, there's various things. What is noticeable when you're leveling in Battle for Azeroth is there's a lack. It's not absent completely, but there's an obvious, really obvious shortage of helm, shoulders, and breastplate quest rewards. Now, those are the 3 slots for Azerite Armour. That could suggest that we get Azerite Armour while we're leveling. So it's not necessarily something we just have to wait to level cap before we can get. But because it's not in any serious way in the alpha yet for testing, I don't know what the intention is there. But, you know, you could, if you wanted to overanalyze the situation, suggest there's a bit of a lack of shoulders, breastplates and helms. And usually where there is one of those offered as reward, it's offered with all the others as well. So you still have to choose one. So with all of my characters, you know, I've got like level, I don't know, 240 odd, 260 odd item level in every slot, except the helm, the shoulders and the breastplate, for which on, I think, all of my characters, at least 2 of those slots are still level 185 item level, which is the new squish, of course. But there's no new talents as such. Azerite is the new talent system. Artifacts were the talent system in Legion. Azerite Armour is the talent system in BFA. We've seen some traits data mined. But again, some of them will be placeholders. Some of them are just ideas then kicking around at the moment. We won't really know what they're actually going to be until much closer. We need to wait for summer, really, I think. No, the talent system is going to be as it is. Up to level 100, then you're done. But that doesn't bother me. We don't need more talents. I just like something. I mean, in WoD, they tried to give us something. That was quite a good idea. That every 2 levels you didn't get a new ability, but you got an amendment to an ability. So you got a particular ability. And it might just be a reduction in a cooldown on something you don't even use while you were leveling. But the fact that you got something was quite nice. And I just think to myself, why don't they do that? That was actually, if you can't come up with actually new abilities, and I understand why they can't or why they wouldn't want to, why not just do that? So when the pre-expansion patch comes out, we get our new abilities, and some of those baseline abilities are a bit crap. And then every 2 levels of BFA, we get a modification to it that makes it better. In fact, I maybe should make a note of that as well. I think Azerite will be a better reflection of a talent system because there's choices. Artifacts, there's no choice, just everything eventually. This is true. There will actually be choices with the Azerite Armour. Obviously, careful what you wish for. It sounds nice in a way. But the problem with this so-called choice is you know exactly what's going to happen. People are going to be flocking to guides, the forums, Discord, and all the rest of it going, which traits should I pick? So people, it doesn't matter what illusion of choice Blizzard try and put in the game. People will always want to know what is the cookie cutter build. And it might be that there isn't one. It might be that it depends on the way your guild does a particular strategy or what your particular role is on a fight or something like that, that might have you changing things around. And then you can't even say Simit to people then. You have to say, well, it depends. That's even worse than Simit. It depends. What does it depend on? Depends on how you do the fight. Okay. Not very helpful. But unfortunately, that might be the way of it. Oh, I don't know. As soon as there's more than one option, there will always be a best. There will be a best, but the problem is it might not be the same best for everyone. That's where it becomes difficult. Where there's an actual best, then Blizzard have simply failed. But to be fair to them, they failed in something that's virtually insoluble anyway. Or insoluble. But where it depends on how you do it, then that's tricky. Like, for example, you notice some of the traits I've seen are movement speed, basically, traits. Now, on a fight where you're going to stand stock still all fight, that's obviously going to be useless. But on a fight where you're forced to move around a lot, you may actually find that that gives you more of a DPS benefit than just a DPS one, which may be counterintuitive for some people. And it depends on how you do the fight. Now, to give you an example from Cenarius Mythic, when I did Cenarius Mythic, we did the strategy, and there weren't many guilds that did this, but there was basically 3 of us on the boss at all times. We didn't go chasing ads. We didn't run around like idiots like everyone else. We stuck on the boss. The purpose for this was to push a phase before we had really horrible ads to deal with. And it worked. So I was one of those people. So I didn't have to worry about my mobility because I was on the boss for 100% of that fight. Come rain, snow or shine. But if I were on the ads and had to run around like an idiot, and I had access to something that gave me movement speed, which I didn't at the time, then that would have been quite nice. That might have been more effective. So there might be consideration like that. I'm not saying there will be, but there might be. Let's have a look what I'm missing. Blizzard should have made artifact abilities a new talent tier. I don't know. You have to be a bit careful just adding layers and layers more talents on. Because the problem is certain combinations of them can become very powerful. And then they can end up nerfing the whole spec because of it. And then what happens, you're in a situation where you've now got to take those talents. Because you've been balanced around the fact that you've got that combination of talents. Which now means that you always have to take that combination of talents. That's all there is to it. It's a bit like Crusade for Rets, and that wasn't a combination, that was just a straight up talent. But there is a combination of talents for Rets in the alpha at the moment that's looking, but you know, they can change them and swap them around, stuff like that. But the more layers you have, the more combinations of talents you have, the more likely it is that something super powerful doesn't get spotted and Blizzard don't do anything about it, and then it goes live and it's buggered. Absolutely buggered. So, in a way, the Azerite Armour system might be better. My only concern is the amount of time it'll take, potentially, to go out and farm all the BIS stuff. I mean, it doesn't Titan Forge. Did they say it doesn't Warforge? I don't know about that. Maybe it Warforges. I know weapons Warforge, but not Titan Forge. I have an idea Azerite Armour doesn't Warforge either, but I'm now that I'm thinking about it, not 100% certain. I only know it doesn't Titan Forge. But you've still got to go out and get them. And maybe some of them are in places that not a lot of people want to do. That fight also involved movement over to the other ads. Yeah, well, scenarios, yes, that's what I was talking about. But I didn't have to move, it was fine. I also got out of moving on Odin as well. When everyone else had to run over and kill the ad, I stayed on the boss. So people moaning about our wheelchair spec, it's coming useful. Because it's a bit like, oh, you know, you need to run out and go and kill that ad. Well, but by the time I get there, people have already killed it. All right, you stay on the boss then. Doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. I love the fact that Blizzard have separated out the talent roster, single target, AoE, etc. Sort of. I mean, where it works, it's a good idea. The problem comes when they can only think of 2 talents. So again, I can't speak for other classes and specs. But again, for Rets, there's a similar situation there. That first talent row is pure single target. 2 of the talents, very sensible talents, good choice. The third one, the poor old class designer keeps coming up with different variations of it, and none of them are very exciting. So if you can't think of 3 versions, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Let's have a look. For the 3 Azerite slots. Oh, XUR, thank you very much. I've got people on Patreon all of a sudden. What's that about? Where was I? I was trying to look for something. Sorry. Mr. Doojer. Sorry, I had to check on the actual Twitch page. I can't see it on the thingy. For the 3 Azerite slots, so we're getting only Azerite gear for that slot, so we're getting normal gear as well. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but there are 3 pieces of Azerite armour, and it's always a helm, shoulders, and a breastplate. If you mean in terms of drops from dungeons, will there be shoulders, breastplate and helm that's not Azerite armour? I'm not sure, but oh dear. But what would be the point? You know, only, you know, why would you turn down even a trait that's not very useful? Is still better than no trait at all, and the armour still has stats on it. So it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense at all for them to put in normal pieces in those slots. Watch my video on Hammer of Wrath being blah, blah, oh, ret questions. Oh, I'm not supposed to do too many ret questions here. But hang on a minute. Being execute based on swapping divine purpose. I did mention it in that post. The reason I said that, that's not my idea about swapping divine purpose and Hammer of Wrath. That's actually Sol Sacra's idea, and Sol Sacra is in direct contact with the developer in question. So that idea will have already been brought to his attention because it's not my idea. Hi, Kisasha. The downtime post on the forums, yes. It's only concerning if they're determined to adopt this philosophy. I don't think they are. I think they're, like, I know it's difficult to get this idea across, but I actually think this expansion, I'm not saying it's all going to be beautiful. I'm not going to say, right, you heard it here first, when Battle for Azeroth comes out, I am not going to say that I'm not going to have any complaints, okay? I like complaining. But they are genuinely engaging. The development team, even albeit one developer, but that's all you need, is genuinely engaging with the, you know, the community on this. So yes, I don't think that they're totally committed to that philosophy. So it could easily change. Oh, you changed the name. Okay, that's fine. No, it's fine. It's Twitch. It's Twitch that confused it. Patreon donuts. I haven't got any. What are Patreon donuts? Is that a thing? There's not going to be shoulders that's not Azerite at max level at least. No, it wouldn't make any sense for there to be. I mean, this is a thing as well. Like, do you know, one of the worst decisions I ever have to make when I'm leveling in a new expansion is, when do I get rid of my tier gear? Because, you know, it's not enough for you to replace it once you start getting better item level pieces. Because it's like, well, how much is the set bonus worth now? And you're thinking things like that. Overthinking it, of course. Who the hell needs to min-max when you're leveling? But you keep it... I usually keep it too long. We're going to have another spanner thrown in the works here. Because if we do get Azerite Armour as we're leveling, that's 3 pieces of tier gear. We can't possibly... If we decide that the Azerite bonuses are better, then obviously we can't possibly have our 4-set bonus. We're going to lose our 4-set bonus maybe quite early. So it has some implications. So, yes. Is it possible that there'll be quests to create our Azerite armors? It might be a quest to get your first set of Azerite armor, like your leveling set. After that, it's just going to be drops. I mean, it might be drops right from the start. It would make sense, I agree, and it would be more fun if we had quests to obtain our Azerite pieces just in the same way we did with our artifact weapons. That would be good. But I don't know. I have no idea how we're going to obtain our first pieces. I have no idea how we even obtain our Heart of Azeroth and Neck. Like, although we don't have Azerite Armour to test in the BFA Alpha at the moment, we do have the neck. We've had that from the start. No idea where we're... because it's just magically appeared around our neck. There was no quest as yet where we obtain it. So I don't know how we get it. You like the class hall quest. Do you know if they're only doing any class-specific quest lines of BFA? I very much doubt it. Everything they've had to say on this subject of class quests since halfway through Legion has been, why are we developing content for, you know, 12 different classes when most people have only got one class, they're only going to do it. As they argue, they're creating, every time they do a class quest, they're creating content for about, I know it's not exactly this, but about a 12th of the population. You know, their point being that they're developing quests that a lot of the population won't do. And they don't see that as an effective use of their time, quite frankly. So, although it doesn't say that they will never do class quests, and it doesn't say they won't do some, they're not going to make a thing of doing class quests in BFA. There may be none at all. There may be ones for individual classes or none at all. But they're not going to just do them as a piece of content like they did in Legion. I mean, you'll notice in Legion, they tuned them down. Like we had the class quests, the spec quests even though some of them borrowed from each other for the artifact quests. It's not like we got 36 unique artifact quest lines, because some of them were very similar to other ones. But we had a fair number still. And then you had your class quest lines in your order halls. And then by the time it got to Broken Shore, it was just 6 Mage Tower events, wasn't it? And then after Broken Shore, there was nothing at all. Diablo, let's have a look. So there's only 3 pieces. They're static to the same 3 slots. Why would you implement a non-Azerite piece in Azerite slot? I don't think you would. That's the thing. I just don't think they're going to be in. You can finally pug Mythic Cross Realm. Yes. Well, it may not be for purposes of pugs. It's just a thing they do. They only have the current tier that can't be cross-realmed. So it's basically Blizzard's way of saying, you should have killed Argus by now. What's up with you? Feels bad. Very bad. The one developer is John Young, yes. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know anything about Diablo. I've got Diablo 3. I've occasionally played it. But I don't know anything about the people who work on it. But I don't need to. I know from discourse with him that he seems to be a very sensible and very open designer. You know, I've got this feeling, I definitely got this feeling in WoD, that they're built up some sort of fortress mentality in parts of development team and a bit of a them and us situation, which is never good. He doesn't have that. So, you know, it's all good. So let's have a look. Where am I missing? And yes, he's called Cephas. He did, ironically, in Legion. It's not like he's come from Diablo to BFA. He did work on Legion, but not as a class designer. He was working on, let me get this right, he was doing legendaries and something else. Can't remember what else. It might have been gear in general. I think it might have been just like raid gear or something. I don't know. I'm missing loads of comments here. What am I up to? Like the idea of being a more supportive DPS class, but they're not going to make us a supportive DPS class. So, you know, you have to bear in mind when Blizzard say anything about anything, they usually say it in terms of how things are going to be. They say it in very aspirational tones. They basically say, oh, we're going to do this thing. It's going to be great. And then they put something in place. And then when the player base doesn't behave in the way they expect, they go, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? It was a bit like the classic case for this was Legion Alpha, when everyone was... So they brought out classes and specs bit by bit because they were being massively reworked. Then the Brewmasters came out and Brewmaster players were complaining about it. And Blizzard basically told them, you don't know what you're doing. The reason you don't like it is because you don't know how to play it. Which didn't go down very well, as you can imagine. But that's their attitude. They just do a thing to encourage a particular behaviour, and then when that behaviour doesn't follow, it's like, why are they doing that? That's not how they're supposed to be doing it. So they really don't like it when you, and that's why, for example, you know, as if leveling didn't take long enough as it is now, they've nerfed dungeons twice. They first of all, if you're in there with a very high level, someone who can easily solo the place because of the scaling thing, they first of all nerfed the mob experience, and then they nerfed the completion experience because they don't like the idea of someone being boosted by a high level. Well, who the hell cares? Why is that? That's not game breaking. I don't know what the problem with that is. But what the problem with it is, Blizzard don't want that behaviour. So, and when the players behave like that, it's like, well, we need to stop them behaving like that. Which is really weird. I don't understand it. I don't get it. What's up? Sorry. Is someone trying to say gnome again? How will I feel when Vulpera are in the game? They're not going to be in the game. Well, they're in the game, but they're not going to be playable if that's what you mean. Of course, that's what you mean. People on my stream last night were hearing half a conversation about this because I was talking about it in Guild. Someone in Guild was saying, oh, they should be Alliance. They can't possibly be Alliance because Vulpera are on the Horde side in BFA. You know, they're there as Horde vendors and things like that. So that's not going to happen. And they're not playable races. They're not. They're just furry goblins anyway. What would be the point? Just play a goblin if you want to play a Vulpera. It's the same basic thing. And they just haven't had a shave. They're just gnomes that haven't... gnomes, behave yourself. Goblins that haven't had a shave. How did someone say gnomes? What have they done? There's some trick to this. Someone's broken my elaborate security. How have you managed to say gnomes? Is it just the question mark? Don't say I've got to put all the words in with each individual piece of punctuation in after it. What's wrong with Twitch filters, for goodness sake? Can it not just understand? Bloody hell. Anyway, let's catch up. Let's catch up. Skeleton say, oh, no. I'm not going to sim myself while I'm leveling to see when I should put my Azerite Armour on. I'll just put it on. If I get Azerite Armour, I'll just put it on. To hell with it. I don't care. I'm missing loads of comments here. Even though there were Shadow Moon priests, would it be too much of a stretch for Magar to be priest? I don't know. I think you could make a case for Magar priest, couldn't you? The thing is, they'll come from Draenor and not like Outland, not Draenor. I know it's the same place, alternate thing, but there's a different. Somehow it's, I don't know, it's a bit different. Is there any sort of evidence of any priest-like behaviour on the orcs on Outland specifically? I don't know. But it could, I mean, well, what classes would they definitely be? They'd definitely be warriors, no chance of Death Knights or Paladins. Or would they? No. Actually, no, you could have them as Death Knights. Of course you could. Yeah, you could have them as Death Knights. Hunters, yes. Shaman, obviously. Rogues, yes. Demon Hunters, no. Monks. Could you have them as monks? You could have them as monks, couldn't you? Druids, of course, you could have them as druids. I mean, I know normal orcs are not druids. You could potentially see that. Would they do them as druids? Not sure. Not sure. Warlocks, yes. Mages, I don't know. Mages and priests, I'm not sure about. Don't know. Do I think skinny Kulturan humans are coming to us as big ones? I think it'd be both. I think it would be both, absolutely. Why are people saying gnomes? It's disgraceful. I'm going to have to do some work later on. This is the insidious thing about gnomes. You know, they just find their way in. They're totally malevolent. People just don't see it. It's like cats. Curious if I've watched any of Preacher's recent videos about his new account and pug-only progression. No, I haven't. But, you know, that's the sort of thing that's right up his street. So I'm sure that that would be quite entertaining. But I haven't had chance. I haven't even had chance to make the videos I want to make yet, let alone watch anyone else's. But, yeah, people were talking about that last week, weren't they? That he was about to do it. So, yeah, he's done. I think he's done 2 videos so far, hasn't he? How are they going to pull off the whole mag? I think. Well, the thing is, the dark portal's still sort of open. I mean, it's open in 2 ways now. You know, they just have to be persuaded. I mean, Garrosh came over. You know, they just have to be persuaded for more of them to come over. I mean, it shouldn't be too much of a sell, because here's what happens now. So, Kalimdor is basically going to be a horde-only continent. You know, quests and blah, 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 blah. But basically, it's horde-only continent. So then, you know, the horde go to Outland and say, look, you're living on fragments of rock hurtling in space. We've carved ourselves out a nice new home on Azeroth. We've got an entire continent just to us. Why don't you come and live with us? I don't think it would be a hard sell at all. There'd be uproar if Horde got yet another druid race. Oh, behave. You don't need quantity when you've got quality. Worgen and Night Elf druids are all the Alliance need. Aside of game limitations, should cases like Tor and Zandalari Paladins have unique abilities, naming and animations? They shouldn't have unique abilities now. You could call the same thing something different. You could give them different names for what is effectively the same spell. That would work. But whether it's what they consider, I don't know. If they're alternate Draenor, you could even stretch Paladins as they seem to be semi-allied with Draenei. No. No. I don't think they are semi-allied with Draenei at the end of WoD. The end of WoD made no sense. You know, basically, you know, Grom Hellscream had shat on all the Draenei, and then we for some reason rescued him at Fell Lord Zakoon in Hellfire Citadel. I don't know why. We should have left him up there, or just made sure he was dead. And then we let him fight with us on Archimonde. Now, we may have considered at that time that, you know, all right, well, the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Let him fight with us. But afterwards, they should have turned around to him and said, right, now you've got some explaining to do, my lad. I really don't think the Draenei would have been all that keen to be working with the Orcs on Draenor. And I doubt that they're supposed to be originating from Draenor. I think it's much more likely, well, Draenor, but our Draenor. Outland, I think, is where they're supposed to be coming from. I don't think they should mess about with that alternate Draenor again at all. They should just pretend that never happened. What is this about balance? Can anyone explain to me how High Mountain Tauren are able to be monks? Oh, the antler's messing with the balance. Well, are High Mountain Tauren monks? Can they be monks? Can they? That would be almost hilarious. I have no idea, Kazrest, though, where the Magar Orcs are coming from. I would be very surprised if they're coming from alternate Draenor, though. That would be bizarre. It would be funny if the skinny Kulturas humans were skinny bears and cats in druid form. No, they won't be. I mean, a troll bear looks much the same as a... Well, doesn't look the same, but in terms of bulk, is much the same as a Tauren bear. It's all fine. Themed Zandalar... Yeah, because people would go mad then. It's one thing for Zandalari trolls to get unique forms for their druid. If Kulturan druids, which we don't know are going to be a thing, by the way, but if they were, for them to get 2 forms, depending on whether they're skinny or fat human, would be... yeah, that would tilt the Horde players like you wouldn't believe. Did any of WoD make sense? No, none of it. I didn't like the storyline at all. And right from the start, I rolled my eyes when they introduced it. Are we going to a place with lore, etc., where any race can be every class? No, no. I am generally okay with more class race combinations than there are, but there is a limit, and we all know where that limit is. Oh, they are monks. High Mountain Tauren can be monks, can they? Wow. And you have one in your raid. So not only can they be monks, but someone has actually decided that that's going to be their character. Really? I don't even know what to think of that. What's this? Whoa. Alliance should get... Oh, Alliance should get to be any dwarf, not just Darkine. Yeah, well, they might later. No, I'm not going to say that. I don't even know what that means. During the last Q&A, Ian made a point of stressing that Magar meant uncorrupted and did not specifically refer to the band of orcs from Outland. No, he didn't. But that is what it means, uncorrupted. You know, the brown orcs on Outland are the uncorrupted ones as well. They didn't drink from the blood of Manaroth. In Outland, another big chunk will float off to the already floating rock with some orcs. I don't know. If the Magar orcs are from Outland, not alternate Draenor, what rep would we need to get exalted with? Well, you say that because what you're thinking to yourself is, I've already got their rep, but consider this. I'm already exalted with Zandalar tribe. What rep? You know, they're going to do one of 2 things. They're either going to remove the associated rep and make us start again, or they're going to come up with a slightly different rep. Because, yeah, there is already Zandalar rep. We could get it in vanilla. I'm exalted with them already. You're okay with more class race combinations? No, you need to listen to me. I specifically said there's a limit, and I also specifically said we all know where that limit is. You hope they eventually add body size to all races. You'd be a fat no. Belly rubs on the ground when I run. You wouldn't be able to run. You'd roll around. I mean, they've already got really bulbous heads. How are they going to cope with a much larger body? You really hope we get a large outdoor raid in BFA, maybe like Mount Hydril. I don't care as long as we don't get an underwater one. I fear for an underwater fight. Obviously, Lady... Because everyone has seen, I assume, the Lady Vash... not Lady Vash. Ashara, sorry, Queen Ashara. What might be... Behave yourself. The Queen Ashara concept artwork. She's got tentacle thingies for legs. She's like Ursula in The Little Mermaid. Only slimmer. That's not encouraging. That is not encouraging. I don't want to be swimming around in a raid. You doubt from this point on there will be a situation where we have to be exalted with old reputations. Well, no, because you can't get Zandalar rep anymore as I had it. So that's what I mean. What they might do is delete the rep, make it a legacy or feat of strength legacy thing, whatever they call it, and then we start again with a different rep, or maybe they just call it something slightly different. So yeah, the fact that you might have Magar rep from Outland doesn't mean to say the orcs are not going to come from Outland. It just means there'll be a different rep, or they'll reset it and give us a legacy achievement for what we got before. It would probably be easier for them to just come up with a slightly different rep. Like they could call it Magar Expedition or something. To distinguish between the rep you got on Outland and the rep you're going to get on Azeroth. Or, well, yeah, Azeroth. Gender fluid racers next. We already have them. They're Blood Elves. You're pretty sure Blizz won't make us go farm rep on some old faction. No, they won't make you farm rep on some old faction. What they'll do is they'll create new content through which you get the rep. It'll be a different rep. They'll make a new one. Your male Blood Elf is not a whole lot different to your female Blood Elf. They just stand a little straighter and don't have such weird elbows. Back to Draenor Orcs. As flimsy as the explanation is, don't the jokes and flirts that have made several references in favour of them being WoD Orcs? I don't know. All I know is that I would be disappointed if that's what they did. Funny story with underwater battles with Lurker in SSE. Your guild decided to give your healers water breathing so they could just stay under the water the entire fight, be able to heal without worrying about the mechanics. In one pull, the buff expired because we're waiting for the pull for a while, and all your healers drown. How can the healers... How can they drown? Your health goes down. I don't know. I healed on that fight. It wasn't a big deal. They reference garrisons and wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff. Oh, don't do they? Oh, I haven't read that then. Fine. No, it's not fine. Right, they need to change that then. I'm not having that. That's ridiculous. Did they say anything about it? He didn't really say anything more about Magar Orcs in the Q&A, did he? I'm trying to read through my notes now on the Q&A. Where's this way I wrote on Orcs? No, he just mentioned them. Right. The mission table is in BFA. They said it's going to be less involved and there's not going to be any content time gated behind it. But beyond that, I mean, it's there. You can see it in the capitals, the respective capitals for Alliance and Horde. But I don't know exactly how it's going to work. It's not really available for testing at the moment. It's just there. At the moment, all it is the scouting map to let you get a starting quest in whichever zone you choose to go to first. Because that's the same as in Legion as well. You go to, you know, the capital, and then you choose which zone you would like to start your questing in, just like you do in Legion. And it gives you a little starter to get on with. You really want to see the new Honour talent system in action. You like the new PvP talent prestige system. Oh, there was something on MMO Champion about that, wasn't there? Just recently. They did a graphic showing how many people were at each prestige level. And it's a nice sort of decay curve, starting at prestige level 1. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not even prestige level 1. I've managed to get almost through the whole expansion. And I've managed to avoid doing enough PvP to get me that far, which I'm very proud of. You still think it'd be cool if instead of send out mission, wait for it to return, you get thrown into the mission as a scenario with your followers? Well, Haven't we got enough of that stuff to do? Going to have island expeditions, dungeons still, Mythic Plus dungeons, raids, world quests are still going to be a thing. You know, the war fronts, although we'll not be spamming those. Obviously, they're going to be time limited. I don't really need to be doing scenarios. I mean, they could do it. You know, it's one of those things. Careful what you wish for, because if you think about it, with the island expeditions, if they can make smart NPCs for the opposite faction, they can also make smart NPCs to help you. In theory, I don't think they're planning on doing this, but in theory, they could make the island expedition something you could queue up for solo, and you just have 2 NPC helpers. God, that would be awful. You can't see them doing an underwater raid. I can't see them doing an underwater raid, but I can see them doing an underwater fight. I would not enjoy it. I just fear when you look at Ashara's concept art, it doesn't look like she's going to be scuttling around on the ground. But of course, at the moment, we don't know how it's going to work. It would be cool if the AI from Islands got introduced to all followers, so you could go do dungeons with followers. Yeah, you see, that would be turning it into a more solo game. The whole point, of course, while World of Warcraft clings desperately to the tag of MMO, it needs to encourage group work in its sort of premier content. So dungeons and especially raids, but, you know, even dungeons have got to be able to, you know, be done as a group. Are all Alliance zones filled out with quest givers hubs now in Alpha? Well, no, there's still one zone for both Horde and Alliance that aren't open. And also I do still keep running across new quests. So even in the zones that have been open for a while, they keep putting new quests in them. But yes, it will be you're not going to even run close to run out of quests to get to 110. It's going to be a doddle to get to 110. No problem at all. But you will have to do each zone. I don't think any zone has got 5 levels worth in it. Not without a lot of rested XP anyway. But assuming you just level from the start and you don't really have rested XP. I reckon each zone is worth a good 4.5 levels. Yes, Stack Attack, play the game alone. I don't think that's what they want. Oh, yes, expeditions. Well, I don't even know what they're officially supposed to be called. I mean, technically it's an exploration. You explore the island. It's also an expedition. Although, technically, I still think exploration is a better word to use, because the expedition is just getting there on a boat. Well, that's a loading screen. You don't do anything for that. The exploration is the bit that you actually do. So, I still like exploration. I just think they're officially called expeditions. Oh, what, Mahal? Fight 1 Tentacles of Ashara, fight 2 Rage of Ashara. That would be like Deathwing again, wouldn't it? Do we really need another fight like that? No. You were thinking like having 1 follower with you and a friend bring theirs. Even then... it's just a slippery slope, I think. They need to make sure that people are encouraged, that they're able to play the game as a single player, but that they are encouraged to group up with others. So in Legion, we got really bored of green and black. What's the new colour scheme that's going to piss? I don't think there really is a colour scheme. There doesn't seem to be one. Obviously, we've not done too many dungeons. Well, when you go into a troll dungeon, gold and every colour under the sun, gold and pastel shades is going to be very much the colour. In fact, that's what I've got in my background. This is one of the dungeons. It's not actually in the dungeon. You know how the way they've done this for years now, haven't they? So with dungeons, if you go to the physical location of a dungeon, you can go behind the instance portal and you've got the actual dungeon mapped out, but without many NPCs. So that's one of them. That's one of the dungeons. But in its real location, so not the actual dungeon itself. There's no mobs cluttering the place up. So basically gold and like, what's that? Like a turquoisey colour. So that's the colour scheme of the troll stuff. Will 3 zones be enough? It's enough to get you the experience you need, yes, with plenty in hand. Easy enough. You don't even have to do any dungeons. You will easily be able to level up to 120, sorry, with those zones. And if you did all the zones in one zone, and all the quests in one zone, and then all the quests in another zone, you wouldn't have to. I reckon you'd still have to do a bit more in the third zone. But I don't reckon it would be very much. I think you'd not have to do very much of the third zone before you were level capped. They have a system like that in Star Wars: The Old Republic. Seems to work well. So maybe as the game dies down. The thing is, there's got a lot of systems in Star Wars: The Old Republic that basically make it not much of an MMO in terms of the social side of it. So I don't know. You say gold for Horde and grey for Alliance. I'm not sure because I've been in. Have I even been in an Alliance dungeon? Maybe I have. I'm not sure. There's the pirate themed one. I guess that's supposed to be. Yeah, that's an Alliance one. Freehold. That's it. That doesn't really have much. That doesn't really have much of a colour scheme to it. I wouldn't say there was an overriding colour there. With personal loot forced on us in raids, they still haven't explained exactly how it's going to work. Now, here's the thing with the personal loot. What they could, if they just wanted to shit on guilds who do the split runs. So in other words, the split runs is where, you have your alt and then you do 2 raids and you go through normal twice and you go through heroic twice to get twice as much loot. All they have to do is prevent master loot being used in normal and heroic. They could still allow Master Loot to be used in Mythic because we're not going to split run Mythic. Now, the top guilds, of course, will still come up with some system of gaming it because that's what they do. They're full-time raiders. They do that. Blizzard don't care about that. They care about, the majority of players. Or, it's not the majority, but, the hundreds of Mythic guilds who have, since WoD, been increasingly using split raids. But anyway, let's go on to the rest of the comments. Sorry. With personal loot forced on us raids, it's one less social interaction you have to deal with now. I really wish we'd be forced to interact on a more frequent basis. If master loot was actually just to be completely removed, which would be madness, but if it were completely removed, that would create... There would be a lot of social interaction. That would be a massively increased social interaction. Because what you're thinking to yourself is, oh, well, we'll just get our personal loot and that'll be the end of it. No. Is that how it works in LFR? No, it's not. Whenever you get something in LFR, you then have a load of people. I mean, sometimes people will go, oh, if anyone wants this, roll. Okay, fine. But let's say you want it. You will then be inundated with whispers going, hey, do you need that? Do you need that? Do you need that? Now, times that by 10 in a guild. Because in LFR, people will say, oh, do you need that? You will say, yes. Or, I've already given it away to someone, and that's the end of it, usually. In a guild, it's like, do you need that? Yes, I do. Do you really need it? Because it's a really good upgrade for me. And didn't you get such and such last week? There'll be things like that. And I don't even know how the officers would deal with it. I suppose it would depend on the guild. So, yeah. Trolls are basically Aztecs now, yes. Well, Zandalar trolls possibly always were. The Alliance side is steampunky. I don't know that I'd go that far. Maybe a bit. Just because she has tentacles doesn't mean she needs water. No, it doesn't. But I query why the tentacles if she's going to be on land. It it would just look weird. I'm not saying they couldn't do it, but it would look weird and unnecessary. Is the leveling much slower than from leveling from 100 to 110? No, it's not. It's about the same. When I've been leveling, it's been roughly a couple of hours per level when I've just been sort of getting into it. Bearing in mind there'll be some time lost for, because some things are bugged, so you lose a bit of time and stuff like that. But yeah, it seems about the same to me. It would be cool if they created gold DKP into the game as a loot option. No, it wouldn't. No. Any system, right, can be gamed. Loot councils became a thing because it's basically the only loot system that can't easily be gamed. When DKP was a thing, and I experienced many different types of DKP system. In vanilla, TBC, I didn't play much in RAS, that didn't really matter. End of Cataclysm and then into MOP until I ended up in a guild that did like loot council. I was always very close to top of DKP. If an item drops that I want, I always got it because I was good at gaming the system and I always had the best gear. So even against people who raided just as much as me and earned just as much DKP. It doesn't matter what system you come up with, I will beat it. Whereas Loot Council, not so easy. There's no system to game there. Apart from anything else, you feel... Because with like DKP, if you bid on an item that you sort of know is a bigger upgrade for someone else, you'll sort of think to yourself, well, they should have bid more on it then. You know, or they shouldn't have spent all their DKP on shit. Whereas with Loot Council, you know, if you know it's a much bigger upgrade for someone else, then you will basically say, yeah, it's good for me, but maybe it's better for them. You're guessing the better organised guilds will have a wish list for every item that makes a BIS upgrade for someone with spoken for again. Not necessarily. They would try and organise it, but it's still going to be messy trying to collect personal loot items together because, you know, you get into the situation where it's like, first week, almost nothing is going to be up for trade. But as it goes on, you know more is going to be. So then it'll be like, someone will, you know, get an item. Officers will say, right, give me all the items you can trade. Some people may try and do without it. And you might think in a mythic guild, who's going to try and deceive them and try and keep the item for themselves? You'd be surprised. There was a guild I was in. It was a very good guild. And I can't remember now. I was querying something about the way they did the loot. And I said, well, why don't you do it like this? Where you can, you know, with the add-on and you can see what people have got equipped and all the rest of it. And the answer I got was because what some people will do, as soon as the boss dies, they will put crap bits of, you know, if the boss drops a really nice ring that they want, and they've got a ring that might be a bit better or about the same, they will unequip it and put a shit ring in its place to fool the loot master into thinking they've got a really crap ring or whatever slot it was for. So even in good mythic guilds, people will behave like that. Well, we know she could cast illusions, yes. But again, that concept artwork was presumably the form that we're going to be fighting her in. We're going back to Ashara now. What was it, Diablo? You would prefer if you got one seal per week and it guarantees loot from whatever you want to roll on. That would actually be quite nice. Yes, I agree with that. Because it wouldn't guarantee you the item you want. It would just guarantee that that particular boss would give you something. There's some benefit in that system. The problem, I suppose, with it is stockpiling it for a new tier, and then you're going to guarantee to be getting it off every boss that drops some good items, and you end up loading yourself up with really good gear in week 1. That, I suppose, is the downside. So it's almost like you'd have to have a different seal for every different tier, which they have done in the past. They did that in MOP. Well, sort of in MOP. I mean, Actually, did they? I think they did in MOP, didn't they? Have different seals for different tiers. You don't think losing Master Loot is the worst thing that can happen? You think Master Loot is a pretty dated system? I don't think it is. It's for a progress raid. It's all about efficiency. You know, if you could, like, if you have personal loot one week, let's say the week you open up a raid tier, and you end up, let's say you end up nearly killing a boss, but not quite. Well, if you'd had better distribution of gear, you would have killed that boss. I think where people don't like Master Loot is where they've experienced it being used either incorrectly or just corruptly. Obviously, I can understand people then would prefer personal loot because then it's in the lap of the gods, but it's very indiscriminate and doesn't help your guild out. Well, they can already prevent stockpiling and reroll. You can only have 6 at a given time. Yeah, but 6 is a lot. The first week a raid comes out, if you can use it on... In fact, you can have more than 6 when a tier comes out, because you can have 6 that you've stockpiled, plus you can spend them, and then go back and get your next 3. So you can basically be coining every single boss, potentially. But even if you can't, just being able to coin 6 bosses that all drop something useful. And let's say you're after tier as well. So let's say you're looking at a boss and it drops a tier piece that you really want. And it drops 3 other items that you're not that bothered about. But then you think to yourself, but if I switch to Holy Spec, then actually there's only 2 other items it drops. So you can switch to Holy Spec, then use the coin, and you've now got, instead of a 1 in 4 chance, a 1 in 3 chance of getting the one you wanted. And you can do that. If you do that once, all right, fine. But if you do it 3 times, or 6 times, or 9 times, then wow. Also remember, you can use the seal on the same boss twice in a week. So you can keep running normal or heroic or whatever, using several coins on it, guaranteeing loot. It could be horribly abused. It would be very nice, but it would be horribly abused. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't a guaranteed drop in the first 2 weeks of a tier or something. JD, you've never been in a guild that has the right mindset about raiding. Well, many guilds don't. So yeah, I can understand people in that environment would prefer personal loot because... But that's what I mean. Like, if personal loot was compulsory for normal and heroic raids, and you only had master loot for mythic raids, then you massively slash the number of guilds. Because let's face it, the vast majority of guilds who get that wrong are likely to be predominantly heroic guilds. Not saying there won't be some mythic guilds, there will be. But you massively slash the number of them. Personally, it gives average something like 2 additional items. The problem is, though, that basically translates to 2 additional chaos crystals. Because it's not going to the right people, it can potentially go into someone it's not even an upgrade for. The evidence that Master Looter is better is because, first of all, if you're giving it personal loot, it's simple as this. So you've got 30 people all getting personal loot. 10 of those people are not even in on any given boss that you're going to progress on in Mythic. So a third of your items, on average, have gone to waste immediately because they're not even in the raid. Then of the other 2/3, some of them will be on people who don't even equip it. Some of it will be on people who do equip it, but it's not really great for them, whereas it could have been amazing for some people. Some trinkets, for example, are extremely powerful on some classes and basically weak on others. And it can make a massive, massive difference. That's why none of the guilds you've been in are mythic guilds. Well, there you go. But as I say, if you removed... I have no objection to removing personal loot, sorry, master loot from normal and heroic runs. Because they're largely done by either pugs or guilds that are using it as a springboard before moving on to hopefully mythic at some point. And if they never intend to do mythic, then they're probably not going to be that bothered about efficiency of passing loot around anyway. Yes, draft of souls and warriors, absolutely. See, here's the thing. At the start of Nighthold, I got a draft of souls on my paladin. I got it from my first cache, you know, from the mission. It was a good one as well. It warforged with a socket, I believe. The warrior in my guild, or warriors, 2 warriors, were not happy with me. Because not only did I, a rep paladin, get it, and not them, a warrior, I didn't use it. Didn't use it. It was no good for me. It looked like it might be good during the PTR, but then they kicked the shit out of Convergence of Fates for Rets, which would have been a good combination with it, and then it became all but useless for me, so I never even used it. What content in BFA is going to be dropping scaling loot? Like World Quest in Dungeon. There's going to be World Quest in BFA. There's World Quest in BFA. They're not active yet because we've not got to level cap yet. But they've said there's going to be World Quests, and they're going to be like there's going to be World Quests on both continents for everyone as well. Think of the drama bringing in a trial player and he gets loot every boss. That would be unlikely, though. And leaves right after. Well, I think the thing is, I don't think that would be as big a deal as some people would make out in that particular case, because the trial in question, personal loot, I mean, it's called personal loot. The very language of it suggests that it's the person who gets it's their loot. The only drama would be the trial player not liking the fact they've got to fork over all their newly found gear if it's not an item level upgrade. You killed heroic Gul'dan 60 times as an arms warrior. The highest you got was 5 item levels, warforged with socket. Well, there you go. After 60 kills, you got what I got after my first cache. You do get worth... Nah, but not in the first week. Nothing goes to waste in the first week. Much less goes to waste in the second week, and so on down. And it's the first few weeks where you want to... That's what the split runs are for. To maximise that gear in the first few weeks. After which it tails off. But the thing is, even when you do start disenchanting or giving away for transmog some master loot gear, you still get more benefit than personal loot. Because if anyone in the raid can use that item, you can give it to them. With personal loot, you can only do that if you have something equal or higher item level. And the thing is, after a while, the only items that do become useful are Titan Forged anyway. So again, with personal loot, much less likely. You're just always much less likely to be able to give it away. Whereas a 985 item level, you know, Titan Forged item level thing drops on Master Loot, you can give it to whoever it's best for. Yes, BIS items, they don't really exist anymore. Maybe there'll be BIS Azerite pieces, but I doubt that as well. Because Titanforge completely knackers it. Warforged wasn't so bad because, you know, if you ran it enough times, you'd probably get a Warforged piece of whatever item, of most of your items. Excuse me. But with Titanforge, you know, and especially given that they said they're going to reduce the chance of Titanforge in BFA, that just means you've no chance. You can't trade the good personal loot though. That's the problem. The really best personal, the pieces that drop that are the best are the best because they're the ones that Titanforge or Warforged socket or something like that. Whereas with Master Loot, you can always trade it. But anyway, that's not the worst of it. The worst of Master Loot going away is not that you can't trade the items to people. That's just that, because that's the same for everyone. So that's actually not a big deal. The worst part, if they did completely remove Master Loot, is the drama it will cause. It will cause drama. It will cause bad feeling. Because someone will get an item that is BIS for them that will have to be given away because it's an even bigger upgrade for someone else. Like, let's say, for example, in Antorus, when we killed Coven, if I'd have got an item off Coven at a time when on Agrimar I wasn't in on Agrimar, someone else was, it might have been a brilliant upgrade for me, but even better for someone who is on Agrimar, better for them to have it because that was our progress boss at the time. Similarly, if anyone got anything on Agrimar but they weren't going to be on Argus, better that it was going to someone who is going to be on Argus. Oh, Mahal, yes, that's another point, of course, as well with personal loot. It does not favour the person who represents the least primary stat level. So yeah, if you've got a raid full of agility and intellect users, then you know. So if you're like, you've got no paladins in the group, you've got no DK, and you've got like a warrior, say. That warrior has a low chance of getting anything because they're not going to get anything traded to them from someone else. They can only get their own gear. Now, that's an extreme example. You're unlikely to just have one strength user, but you can easily have a situation where you don't have many. Like if you think about this tier, agility users might be a bit scuppered because you might have a couple, like rogues. I mean, we've got 2 rogues in the guild right now, sort of. But in previous guild I was in, we had real trouble getting rogues. We didn't have a monk. We had 1 feral, a couple of hunters. So that's, you know, for 1/3 of the primary stats, that's a 1/7 of the raid group. Which means they would have struggled to gear up as quickly as everyone else. You've got to understand as well, you know, the World of Warcraft attracts a lot of very clever, of 2 groups of people. One is very creative people, but 2 is very analytical people, people with a lot of skills in maths and engineering, which is why we get things like Simcraft. There is no way if personal loot could ever even approach the suitability of master loot that someone wouldn't have worked it out and be using it. But I mean, because I'm only looking at it empirically, obviously, because there is no data for it, because no one has run personal loot in a progress raid, ever. But on an individual boss when you forget, but generally speaking, not for a whole tier of progress. But just thinking about it empirically, you know, there is no way it can be. It's like one of those things where if you were to do a t-test on it, it's one of those things where you just look at the data and you go, well, there's nowhere near. Because in every situation where you could trade loot on personal loot, you could also trade it on master loot. Only there's loads of examples of situations where you could trade it on master loot and you can't on personal loot. What if master loot dropped 1 item instead of 4 and personal loot had a 90% drop chance? Well, but then that's the numbers just work in your favour then. But that's not the situation we have now. The situation we have now is that at most, personal loot might on average drop a couple of items extra. But you can't trade them to who needs them most. Any suggestions on how to send our thoughts to Blizzard? They answered that very question in the Q&A. Basically, forums and Twitter. You can tweet at Warcraft Devs. Your best chance of that tweet being seen, I never bother with this myself because I don't expect they ever to respond to any of my tweets. But if you wanted to maximize your chances of it being seen by a developer, then, well, there's 2 things. First of all, I would say do it during office hours in California. Second of all, Rebdul, who's the who writes for Wowhead, she said what she does, because she has had the odd response from them, is she said she watches their Twitter. As soon as she sees a developer tweet something, that's when she puts her tweet in, because she knows there's someone looking at it at that time. So that's when she puts it in. So you could do that to maximise your chances. Beyond that, just post on the official forums. Obviously the NA forums. I mean, you could try on the European forums. But, you know, that's about as much use as a chocolate fire guard most of the time. Oh, the item level drop announcer. Yes, I saw that. That was using LFR. It was an extremely toxic add-on because it puts pressure on someone. The add-ons seem to suggest that this person should be able to trade it. And then when they didn't want to, because maybe it was an upgrade or maybe they just didn't want to, it's their loot. It's LFR for Christ's sake. Then people used to get very shirty with them, or even in just pugs, and potentially people were kicked over it. Which is, and I don't mean the person with the add-on being kicked, I mean the person with the loot, which is pretty bad. Ian, yes, he said Snapchat tongue-in-cheek. I don't think they have a Snapchat. I've not been invited to it if they do. I mean, there is a post on the official forums about Master Loot. As you can imagine, it's fairly hefty. Let me see if I can find it again. I don't know where it is anymore. But there is one there, and there's been quite a lot of respondents to it. I wouldn't describe Ian as head of World of Warcraft. He's the game director. He has bosses of his own. I don't know how much autonomy he has in, because you've got to bear in mind some of the decisions they have to make on World of Warcraft have got nothing to do with giving the player a good experience. It's got everything to do with financial strategy. And that is not something that he will come up with, or he may come, you know, he may be given a challenge. It's like, well, you've got to come up with something in the game that allows this. And, you know, so maybe he gets decisions, or some input over it, but he will have superiors that basically say, no, you've got to do this for money reasons. But yes, the way he got into it is because he was a prominent member of the community who then went to work for Blizzard and did quite well as an encounter designer, and then got promoted to assistant game director during WoD, and then game director join Legion. How many guilds have Nighthold then TOS killed? Quite a few, but then guilds do die all the time. I don't know. I mean, I would get the feeling... See, it doesn't matter to me so much how many guilds go under. What matters to me is how many raiders go under. I get the feeling that during Legion, sure, there's been plenty of guilds go tits up, but if most of those players ended up going to new guilds, then that could be argued it's just a rebalancing. I did talk earlier in the expansion, are there just too many guilds, raiding guilds? I just got the feeling there were too many raiding guilds and that everyone was spread too thin. So if a load of guilds go under and they basically absorb those spare raiders, then it's just a rebalancing of the population. However, if a load of the players in those guilds quit, if the reason those guilds went under is just because players stopped playing the game, then that is more of a worry. That being said, I think there are more raiders in Legion. I think there's no real doubt about that. But a lot of them are people who have only just taken up raiding. So the number of experienced raiders, as in before Legion, I think has dwindled. It's not necessarily, you know, an awful thing, but... Isn't the myth that he worked out that Cthulhu was unkillable? I don't know. At the time, when I was playing in vanilla, I didn't do a lot of stuff like reading stuff on forums myself anyway. You know, I basically just played the game. I'd occasionally watch the odd YouTube video, but I didn't really engage in a wider community other than the Realm. The Realm forums was basically where I went, if I went anywhere at all. So unless someone told me something, and if they told me something, then I'd probably forgotten it anyway. I mean, for simming stuff, obviously, raid bots... To use raid bots well, though, you do need the Simulation Craft add-on. But raid bots is such a great tool. I mean, before raid bots, it was tricky because you had to use SimCraft and then it's a faff. Using SimCraft in its normal format is a faff, especially when you want to sim different bits of gear. I mean, you've got Simpermort, I suppose, but if you wanted to sim a piece of gear that you don't possess, you're just looking ahead. You had to get a code from Wowhead. If it was a relic as well, my God, that was painful. So in that case, Pawn was probably a decent, easy solution. But I'll be honest now, even though I've still got the guide up for using Pawn, I might remove it because, or at least remove it from the playlist, because I'm not sure I would advise the use of Pawn anymore, given that Raidbots is so quick and easy to use. You just need the Simulation Craft add-on for it. I mean, all right, it's not as quick and easy as Pawn, but with Pawn you have to keep putting stat weights in. Where are you going to get those stat weights from? Well, Raidbots. Also, it doesn't, like, if Pawn tells you something's an upgrade, it might actually not be. Because you might be quite close to a bit of a breakpoint on a stat, and you go well over it, and then all of a sudden, actually, it turns out it's a downgrade. At least people can't throw, do you even play the game at him, since he clearly does. Yeah, but he only plays it about my level. I think he's only just killed Agrimar, hasn't he? Peasant. If he can't even, if he's not even ahead of me on progress, it's absolutely no. Plays a Resto Shaman, doesn't he? Oh, didn't someone point something out? I saw something. Oh, was it in the last week? Someone looked up his character and noted that he had an old expansion enchant on something. Like a plus 50 mastery or something like that. Don't know how that happened. Well, there has been a huge dynamic change in Legion because basically the answer to any sort of gear question is you have to sim for yourself. I mean, I try and answer and sort of say, you know, under what situations one piece of gear might be better than another. But ultimately, the answer always has to be in there somewhere, but you should sim yourself to be certain because you can't give definitive advice. No, it wasn't the WOD enchantment for speed. It was just mastery. That was it. It was a mastery enchant. Nothing else. There was no cunning behind it. It was straight up a bad enchant. Oh, it was a ring, was it? There you go then. I knew it was. Yeah, it was just a very bad enchant. Maybe that's his art since people know his character. No, it wasn't. Apparently, well, I don't know. I don't know his character. But apparently it was his actual character. Even if it was an alt, it was still, like, it's surely easier to get a Legion enchant. The way professions work these days, it must surely be easier to get a Legion enchant than an old enchant because, if anything, I mean, there can't be that many people. I don't actually know this. I'm rambling. There can't be that many people, surely, that sell a lot of old expansion materials, or do they? But even then, why would you? It's not like it costs much for an enchant. Yes, I know. There's a cloak enchant that has a speed boost that can be worth taking, but that's not what it was. It was just bad. Just lazy. It would have been better to have had no enchant at all. I'm just reading a post on the thing, on the blue tracker. Someone's put as their title, "Fix this game!" 3 exclamation marks. To which you immediately think, why has a blue responded to that unless it's to lock it? Because that's clearly an inflammatory post. But it's just clickbait by the look of it. Because in it, all they're doing is explaining what Blizzard have said about the right way to give feedback. Which is a bit silly, really, because all you're actually going to do is attract the sort of people that would agree with that message and therefore troll the hell out of the post. Oh, hold on. What's going on there? Now, I was trying to find something else. There was something. I saw someone post something about islands, what they're going to do to update the islands, but I can't find any source for it. So it might be someone just making it up. Maybe. Let's have a look here. Hold on, where is it? Oh, here it is. Yes, that's right. I was just looking at it now. So these changes will be in the next build, presumably this week. Or I mean, so far there's been a build each week. Updated abilities for Azerite-based elementals. Oh, nice. New abilities for several humanoid groups, whatever. Normal difficulty tuning. Generally, things will be easier and the AI is less aggressive. AI NPCs should jump around less. Well, that's a shame. I quite like that. Doesn't say anything about fixing the bugs, but never mind. Updated Azerite visuals all around. Azerite energy no longer stacks. Consumables available at your docks now cost seafarers doubloons. I didn't think they were going to stay costing gold. Seafarers doubloons can now show up on expeditions. Oh, that was supposed to be heroic, was it, that we were testing? No, hold on. No, it said in the original post it was on normal difficulty. Hold on. What's he on about? It says, of note, we think the current tune on alpha is in a good spot for heroic difficulty. So on normal, you'll see creatures get a bit easier. But in the first post, it says, we are currently testing Ungol ruins on normal difficulty. Am I missing something? See, this is what happens when you allow a gnome to post on behalf of Blizzard. Apparently, this muffiness is also the person responsible for the pineapple pizza hate that's going to be in BFA. I heard. Now, of course, the person who told me that may have just been telling me that because he knows I would readily believe it of a gnome. But that's what I heard. And then just a final comment. We do indeed plan to have a mythical difficulty as well as a PvP one. I like pineapple pizza. I don't see what the problem with it is. I don't know what's up with people. Ham and pineapple pizza, lovely. There's one pizza place near here that don't even offer it as an option. You know, when you do the build your own pizza thing, it's not even there as an option. It's disgraceful. It's nothing to do with being Italian. The pizza, when we say pizza, and generally speaking, we're talking about American pizzas, not Italian pizzas. That's a different beast altogether. Italian pizzas are not swimming in cheese. And half the things that go on typical pizzas don't belong on Italian pizza. We're talking about the American pizzas, you know, where a nation that takes the cuisine of other cultures and then dumps a load of extra sugar or fat on top of it. I can't say I've ever had a New York pizza. Never having. Oh no, did I? I have been to New York, but I didn't have a pizza. I mean, it's quite easy to rectify. All you have to do, I suppose, if I want... I mean, there's plenty of other pizza places. I'll just get it from somewhere else if I fancy having pineapple on it. But if I had to, I suppose I could always just get some actual pineapple and some mozzarella cheese and put my own on and stick it back in the oven. I'm not seeing... too much that's very different on these islands things then. Just different abilities on them. What's wrong with Chicago deep dish? As long as it's not like one of those in Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares where you pick the pizza up and all the topping slides off because it's full of grease. I was having to use pizza as a metaphor for explaining accretion disks the other week with my students doing the astronomy unit. What's this going on? More drama to look up in a minute. Oh, what's this? It's not in the guild, by the way. Huh. Right. Ask Mr. Robot up to tricks again. I don't know. Anyway, we've come to the end of this one. What are we doing tomorrow? Oh, but we're raiding again tomorrow, aren't we? So I'll be back on with Mythic Argus Progress tomorrow and Thursday. And then back on with the Alpha on Friday, I guess. Assuming there's a new build-up. I guess there'll be a new build at some point. So thank you very much for coming on, everyone. And until next time, I will see you later. Have a good night, all.